Okay, so for decades, there's been this shadow war raging, right, between Iran, Israel, and the United States. It's been this hidden conflict. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into how that all finally blew up into a full-blown war, one that has literally redrawn the map of the Middle East. This clock had been ticking for years, really. But on this one Friday morning, February 28th, 2026, time finally ran out. And then came the announcement, an announcement that sent shockwaves across the entire globe. And there it is. That was the official word. Super stark, no room for interpretation. It confirmed what everyone had been dreading. That long simmering conflict, yeah, it had finally boiled over. But here's the thing. This wasn't some random explosion of violence. Not at all. This was the climax of nearly 50 years of bad blood, proxy fights, and staring down the barrel of a nuclear showdown. So the big question is, how did we actually get here? All right, let's start with the immediate trigger. What was the final spark? We have to look at what went down in February of 2026. Okay, so the opening shot was absolutely devastating. First, you had Israel's Operation Roaring Lion, which literally decapitated the Iranian regime by killing the supreme leader. At the very same time, the U.S. kicks off Operation Epic Fury, a massive air and sea assault designed to just cripple Iran's ability to fight back. And get this, in just the first 12 hours, they carried out a combined, staggering 900 strikes. But Iran didn't just sit there. Their response was fast, launching this huge wave of over 400 missiles and hundreds of drones at 9 different countries. But that initial spark, well, it landed in a tinderbox that had been piling up for decades. To really get the real cause here, we've got to rewind and look at this 47-year feud. It's a story all about ideology, ambition, and just a whole lot of mistrust. And this timeline, well, it shows a pretty clear pattern of things just getting worse and worse. It all kicks off back in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution. That's when this new regime comes in that's just fundamentally hostile to the US and Israel. Fast forward to 2002, and boom, Iran's secret nuclear program is revealed, putting the whole world on edge. Then 2018, the US pulls out of the Iran nuclear deal, basically removing all the diplomatic safety nets. And the 2023 Hamas attack, that just dragged the whole shadow war right into the open. By 2025, things had already gotten hot with the so-called 12-day war. Direct strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. I mean, that really set the stage for what was coming. Okay, so to really get Iran's strategy, we need to talk about its most powerful tool, its main way of projecting influence, and that's something called the axis of resistance. First off, just look at the map for a second. Let's just appreciate the sheer scale here. Iran is huge. We're talking bigger than France, Germany, and Spain all put together. And its location, right there on the Persian Gulf, that gives it incredible strategic leverage. It's basically a gateway between the East and the West. So this is how Iran pushes its power out beyond its own borders, the axis of resistance. It's not some formal, signed-on-the-dotted-line alliance. Think of it more like a network of proxies. Iran calls it their forward defense mechanism. Basically, it's about using allied militias to fight their enemies far away so the fight doesn't come home. And the members of this network? Their names you've definitely heard. You've got Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis down in Yemen, plus a bunch of different militias in Iraq and Syria. For years, the threat from all these groups put together, especially Hezbollah with its arsenal of over 100,000 rockets, that was Iran's ultimate insurance policy. It was their way of saying, don't even think about attacking us directly. And this is the crucial point. This is what changed everything. In the 2 years before the war, Israeli military operations just systematically hammered Hamas and Hezbollah. And with Iran's 2 most powerful proxies seriously weakened, well, that insurance policy was basically gone. And all of a sudden, the whole strategic calculation for Israel and the US totally shifted. A direct strike on Iran, it started to look like a risk worth taking. All right, so now let's zoom out a bit and look at the global impact. Because this conflict didn't just shake up the Middle East, it immediately threatens to put a chokehold on the entire world's economy. And the reason the global economy instantly went on high alert, it comes down to this one narrow strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it's one of the most critical choke points for all of global trade, period. Just how critical are we talking? Well, think about this. 27%, more than a quarter of all the oil traded by sea in the entire world, passes through this one little waterway. It's literally the planet's energy artery.
And it's not just oil either. On top of that, you've got a full 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, or LNG, using the same route, mostly coming from Qatar. So any disruption here, it has an immediate and really severe impact on energy security for pretty much all of Asia and Europe. And you can see the real-world cost almost instantly. Look at how fast and how dramatically the markets reacted to this. In just the first week of the war, natural gas prices in Europe and Asia shot up by over 50%. This wasn't some far-off threat. This was an immediate, full-blown economic crisis. But the economic shockwaves went way beyond just fuel prices. Think about all the hidden stuff that makes our global economy run. Over a third of the world's urea, which we need for fertilizer, comes from the Gulf. That threatens food production. 30% of the world's helium, which is crucial for making semiconductors, comes from Qatar. And half of the world's seaborne sulfur, which is vital for mining critical minerals, comes from this one region. It's all connected. So all of this leads to the massive question: what happens now? What does this new reality even look like? There's one thing that all the sources we looked at agree on. The conflict that kicked off on February 28, 2026, was a genuine, fundamental turning point. The old way of doing things in the Middle East, it's been completely shattered. And that strike against Iran's leadership, it didn't just take out one person, it tore a massive hole right in the center of the regime, creating this huge power vacuum. And that single act pretty much guarantees a future filled with instability, and not just for Iran, but for the entire region. Which leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling question. This war has totally shattered the old balance of power. But with that old order gone, what comes next? What's going to rise up and take its place? Really, the only thing we know for sure is that the future of the Middle East, and maybe the world, is now completely unwritten.